hope for your own daughters. And do you think it's fair if some young woman who's really talented isn't getting an education? And actually trying to get a sense of what's the underlying ideas that they have. Now, ultimately, they may be completely wrong. But just the mere act of you asking them what they think in a respectful way may, at the margins, soften things up a little bit, that you now can get something going, right? And that, I think, is just a basic exercise that not enough of us engage in, because we tend to just want to win an argument, right? I mean, we're trained, especially a lot of young people like you. You're smart, and you're used to being clever and competing in school, and so and you start arguing, and this is the benefit, by the way, of those of you who are not married. Once you get married, it may take you about 10 years to figure out that, like, winning the argument does not necessarily result in good outcomes. Like, there are a lot of times where I win the argument with Michelle, but I lose the war. And then over time you realize, you know what, let me try to figure out how I just get things in a good place. And that may mean that I didn't win the argument. But that principle applies. Now, look, when there are some structural issues that are difficult to handle, and I alluded to some of them, the nature of social media, and in the United States, I don't know what's comparable here in India, but in the United States, it used to be when I was young, and now I'm talking about when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, back in the 70s, you basically had 3 channels. So everybody watched 3 channels. Everybody basically watched the same TV and the same newscasts and the same documentaries. And so even though there were disagreements, everybody kind of was operating on the same basic facts. Now, you've got 500 channels, and you've got the internet, and YouTube, and Facebook. And so there are 100 versions of the truth, or 1,000, or 1 million. It becomes harder to compromise when there's so many different versions of the truth, and people aren't agreeing to the same facts. I used this example this morning. Climate change, but it's more important to alleviate poverty and get electricity to people, so we should use coal because it's cheaper. And then I can have an argument. I say, well, actually, solar is becoming cheaper, and what I have trouble doing is having a conversation where somebody just says, the climate's not changing. Because then I have to, there's just a lot of work. That becomes almost like a theological argument. It's like, because it just has to do with somebody's decided this is what I believe, as opposed to looking at evidence and facts and the process of reasoning that signifies things like this scientific revolution. So that I think makes things harder, but this is part of the reason why I think it's so important not just to be an internet activist. Because I think that if all you're doing is communicating online, it is very hard to break across opinions or to reach in a serious way and engage people who don't agree with you. But if you're sitting face to face and you're having a conversation, even if it's something just as subtle as you notice, oh, this person's wearing a shirt with the logo of my favorite football team. And maybe we can talk a little bit about sports. which gives us something we haven't, right? Some possible areas of common experience that then leads you into the ability to have those conversations. All right? And then the last point I would make, though, about compromise, examine yourself so that you understand you can't be a purist if you want to actually make change. Because you will never get 100% of what you want. You will never get 100% justice, or 100% equality, or 100% clean air. And so you are, if you are living in the world trying to make change, then what you have to anticipate and embrace is the idea of incremental change, because that's generally how change works. That's how change works in nature. That's how change works in geology. And